In the northwest corner of Gloucester, a shingled cottage perches on Washington Street, facing Folly Cove. Many people know this building as where the Folly Cove designers printed their textiles. But the most recent resident of this unassuming home would quietly and humbly advance some of the most provocative artistic concepts of the time. This building was summer home and studio from 1975 until he died in 2018 to Ralph Coburn, an artist who moved softly among giants and who created a temporal body of work with groundbreaking vision. The Boston Globe art critic Sebastian Smee wrote in 2010, "Not enough people know about Coburn's work, which is spare, beautiful, witty, and uncannily satisfying. Coburn himself, I've been told, is modest to a fault, which is no doubt one reason why we don't know more about him." Born in 1923, Coburn grew up in Miami, Florida. He studied architecture at MIT, but the war interrupted his studies. Disqualified from the Army for vision problems, Coburn returned to Florida to work as a draftsman in the Miami Air Force. This background, MIT's emphasis on invention across all departments, those years drafting airplane parts in 2 dimensions, would later separate Coburn from his friends who had studied in art schools. Coburn at times felt inadequate about his drawing skills and the lack of traditional art background. But these years at MIT and working with blueprints would inform the novel direction towards which his work would ultimately go. Coburn returned to Boston after the war, this time to officially study painting and to work at the Boris Mirsky Gallery. Boris Mirsky was determined to cultivate an avant-garde in Boston. And Coburn reconnected with a group of Boston friends he had met earlier, friends who had been studying at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. One of those friends, Barbara Swan, introduced Coburn and the rest of their group to Cape Ann, probably in 1947, when she rented a studio for the summer on Bearskin Neck. Her family went back generations in Rockport. But it was their friend Ellsworth Kelly with whom Coburn had the most critical bond. Kelly would go on to become internationally famous for his hard-edged abstraction. In 1949, Kelly invited Coburn to France.
All the kids went to Paris. All the art students at the museum school. I don't know why, but Paris was a mecca. I went to Paris following a letter from Ellsworth. "Paris, Ralph, you must come over here. Paris is the city for you."
The 2 young Boston artists had found the swooshes and drips of abstract expressionism, which had been dominating the American art scene, unappealing. They were younger than Franz Kline, Jackson Pollock, and Willem de Kooning, who ruled this movement. Coburn and Kelly went to Europe looking for the picture-building intellectualism of the modernist abstractionists like Matisse, Paul Klee, and Picasso.
We tried to meet Picasso. We went to his studio. Kelly went up to the front door. It was a house in the suburbs of Paris. And his wife, Jacqueline, came to the door, and I saw her shaking her head and smiling. "No, you can't see him." When Kelly got back in, "You can't see him, he's working."
As Pollock spattered paint, in Europe, artists in all mediums were responding to the Surrealist and Dadaist movements. Concepts, not still lives, were their subjects. John Cage was in Paris composing music by the flip of a coin, using chance as a means of deciding pitch and notes. His partner, dancer Merce Cunningham, was applying the same radical theories of time and space to the ballet bar.
The minute I got to the hotel, out bounded John Cage and Merce Cunningham. John Cage immediately introduced himself to me. Very cheerful, very positive. Kelly had never heard of him. And he had, of course, never heard of Kelly either. Kelly was not famous then.
Coburn and Kelly both began to reduce elements in their paintings down to their most minimal form, void of layers of meaning or interpretation. Color was color and shape was shape. Painting for these two became architectural. As mentioned, Coburn's background had prepared him for this embrace of two dimensions. He had no traditional art education from which he needed to free himself, as Kelly may have. Coburn's background was in blueprints, flat forms, and finished drawings, not landscapes. So when Kelly began working with Chance, Coburn asked, "Well, this has been done. What can I do that's original?" Again, that MIT discipline that emphasized invention, not imitation. And so Coburn moved away from Chance and all alone towards something he called choice. Coburn created a number of works in this time simply labeled Arranged by Choice, each a series of separate canvases contained in a rectangle that could be rearranged in almost infinite combinations. The person hanging the work has the choice of arranging the canvases as they wish, therefore participating in the creation of the work. In short, each painting comes with an invitation to partner with the artist. Coburn called this concept participatory. From these pieces, Coburn shifted again, this time breaking apart the contained rectangle. In this phase, each work became a number of different panels intended to be arranged over a wall as the collaborator chooses. Suddenly and radically, the relationship between painting and wall changed. The painting became an active part of a whole environment, not something depicting a translated message of elsewhere and hanging static on a wall. And again, the person hanging the work participates in each new composition. Later, Coburn moved past these participatory pieces and began to elevate the grid itself as a concept, as in this shimmering work entitled Folly Cove, and this evening painting. Coburn's modesty may account for yet another underreported achievement. In 1957, he left France for good, returning to Boston to work as a layout artist and typographer, designing posters and graphics at MIT's Office of Publications, where he remained for years. It was in this design studio that Coburn has recently been credited with moving the team toward the Swiss design he had seen in Europe, practically importing the Helvetica font. The Coburn concepts, choice, participation, and what he called random sequence, created by him in the 1950s, had not been seen before. Coburn conceptualized mutability and interactivity, pioneering what became ruling themes in art in the 20th century. The scholarship on Coburn is just catching up. As Sebastian Smee says, perhaps because Coburn was shy about success and naturally deferential. His work hangs in the Rose Art Museum at Brandeis. The Museum of Fine Arts Boston owns a number of Coburn pieces. In 2012, the Cape Ann Museum held an exhibition of his work entitled Arranged by Choice. And Coburn had his first national exhibition entitled Ralph Coburn Random Sequence at the Art Club of Chicago in 2017. Coburn was 94. As his work moves into prominence, the story of his pioneering concepts is being rewritten. And this element of Coburn's life cannot be discounted. The fact that even art critics note his humility, his graciousness, and his kindness. Perhaps there was artistic power in that kindness. The way architecture and drafting informed Coburn's work, perhaps the nature of his personality informed it too, particularly in his participatory pieces. "Come, let's do this together," Coburn said, building inclusiveness and generosity into every painting. Still standing by the road in Folly Cove is the little studio, as modest a building as Coburn was an artist, but where he imagined, invented, and created, his feet on Folly Cove floorboards and his mind full of ideas born in a Paris friendship.